You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Okay, now we turn to ancient and classical China, and we're going to attempt to appreciate two dynasties that developed along the fertile Huanghe or Yellow River over 4,000 years ago. Those are the Shang and the Chu. By providing cultural and political stability to the region, three philosophical traditions developed: Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. And accompanying these beliefs were impressive technological achievements, including metalworks, gunpowder, paper, and the manufacture of silk. But first, the geography. Like all the previous civilizations covered in this course, China benefits from three major rivers: the Huanghe, the Changjiang or Yangtze, and the Qizang. Now, the Huanghe, which is referred to as the Yellow River, runs 2,400 miles from the interior of China to the Yellow Sea. And as the textbook reveals, wheat became the crop best suited to the river basins due to the rich yellow soil identified as loess. Meanwhile, the Changjiang or Yangtze's predominant agricultural activity was rice farming. The region also has good climates where extremes in weather are rare. And most important is that 1/3 of China is mountainous, providing protection from outside invasions. So, two cultures are going to flourish during the Archaic era around the Huanghe River, starting around 5000 BCE. And that is the Yangshu and the Lungshan. But it was not until the 1700s BCE that the introduction of writing revealed the first civilization to emerge along the banks of the Yellow River, and that was the Shang. Centralized state and religious power occurred in the capital city of Anyang, and the Shang king served as the high priest, and as the textbook reveals, the development of more complex forms of social organization resulted from metalworking. The Shang created sophisticated religious practices learned from their archaic practices rooted in the environment. And to understand their ancestors' calling and to appreciate the will of the spirits, the Shang used oracle bones, animal bones inscribed with various questions that the people wanted answered from the spirit world. And as described by numerous historians, in religious ceremony, a heated rod was inserted in the oracle bone, and that resulted in many different cracks. And then a priest or king would interpret the meaning of the cracks, giving the people answers to the questions asked. So we're going to pause here and take a look at the origins of China's religious worldview by viewing the first few minutes of Michael Wood's documentary, China, the Mandate of Heaven, which follows this presentation. So let's begin viewing the documentary by listening to the first 7.5 minutes, and then we'll come back to this presentation. So go view and then come back. Okay, so as Michael Wood emphasized in the first minutes of the film, the Shang developed an ideographic written script in which a graphic symbol represents an idea or concept or an object, without expressing the sound that forms its name, and what allowed for the advancement of their society was the sophisticated bronze metalworks. So in 1028 BCE, an ambitious lieutenant named Wu marched on Anyang capital and established the Zhou dynasty, or the Zhou dynasty. Now the textbook reveals that the best source for understanding everyday life at various social levels in the early Zhou is the Book of Songs. The dynasty centralized power through a new principle. It was called the Mandate of Heaven. And if rulers were just, authority to rule came from heaven. And as sons of heaven, rulers were provided extra authority to accomplish political and religious goals. So a ruler retains the mandate of heaven as long as he rules in the best interests of the people. So impressive technological achievements followed. Now, militarily, the Zhou invented the crossbow and introduced cavalry in battle. Agriculturally, iron plows proliferated along with sophisticated irrigation systems. And with the expansion of trade, road building improved. And by 771 BCE, the dynasty's expansion declined with losses in war to northern enemies. And by 256 BCE, the dynasty's empire broke into competing city-states led by local lords who once served as the sons of heaven. Now, the decline can be seen by the 4th century BCE, when popular Chinese religion treated illnesses as a result of possessions by demons. So the transition from the Zhou dynasty to the Qin became known as the era of warring states. All right, so during the decline of the Zhou dynasty and beginning the era of warring states, two important philosophical traditions emerged, each responding to the chaotic disorder brought on by the ruling classes. One was Confucianism, the other was Taoism. Two other traditions likewise are going to emerge, that's legalism and Moism as presented in the textbooks, and they emerged during the transition from the Zhou dynasty to the dynastic emergence of the Qin during and after the era of warring states. So let's take a look at Confucianism. Now, the philosophical tradition of Confucianism began when a teacher working as a government official saw up close how a state malfunctioned. Kong Fushi traveled across China during the era of warring states, sharing his ideas about the role of the individual in the state. And those who followed him and wrote his thoughts, entitling them the selected sayings, which were known as the Analects. For example, the following notable quote reflects Confucius's insistence that the basic unit of society was the family. If there is righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there is harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. If there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. So the textbook emphasizes Kong Fushi was most interested in orderly and stable human relationships. Order and hierarchy were of primary importance, especially when addressing gendered relations. The male was the undisputed head, with women and children owing the male absolute obedience. People should live in a principle of ethics where the group comes before the individual. And peaceful social relations and effective government were the product of benevolent conduct. So good government was the responsibility of the ruler, while good subjects was the responsibility of the people. And all must perform their corresponding class responsibilities for society to function effectively. So Confucianism celebrated distinctions between and separation of socioeconomic classes as necessary for harmony. Everyone has a place, and it is important for public servants to judge rulers accordingly. And as stated in the textbook, a corps of officials educated on Confucian principles came into existence and were identified as the Shi, or mandarins as the West referred to them. This was an actual administrative class influencing China for 2,000 years. So Confucianism benefited their elite class standing. As a follower of Confucius, Mencius claimed that human nature is fundamentally good, while the philosopher Xunzi argued that people are born selfish and greedy, but can be trained to be good. Yet during the Warring States era, many schools of thought opposed Confucianism. For example, Mo Xi believed that every idea should be evaluated on the basis of its utility for the people in the state. So, another response to the turbulent times was Taoism, or the Way. The founder is considered by most to be Lao Tzu, meaning old master. His ideas were written by his followers in the Tao Te Ching, or the Way of the Tao. Lao Tzu sought wisdom and happiness in all things. And by seeking the Tao, or path, harmony with nature was possible. Renouncing social structures and worldly ambitions led to wisdom and happiness. So Lao Tzu questioned whether life was better than death, and the yin and the yang became symbols representing the Taoist theory of harmony. The yin is the passive, female, cool, dark principle of the universe, while the yang is the active, male, warm, light side. All people have both elements, and by seeking the path or the way of the Tao, one finds balance and harmony. And that's Taoism. Now, another important philosophy, likewise emerging during the Warring States era and incorporated during the rise of the Qin dynasty, was legalism. And legalist thought adhered to the principle that human nature is essentially evil, and a ruler must provide strict discipline to overcome it and maintain order. Legalists believed people should be put to work to produce for the state rather than become educated. Another philosophy is going to be introduced by Mo Tzu that rivaled the other major schools of thought. And Mo Tzu introduced the doctrine of universal love as a solution to the chaos of the warring states. Now, the textbook emphasizes Mo Tzu repudiated Confucius's ideas about the primacy of family relations, which undermined the ideal of social equality. Mo Tzu instead expounded a doctrine that people should treat one another as they themselves wished to be treated. So, we want to end this presentation on China by going back and viewing in its entirety Michael Wood's documentary, China, the Mandate of Heaven. So please watch the documentary in its entirety as we conclude China. Thank you.